This is Only the Strong Survive, a podcast powered by Kahn Media, where we dive deep into the world of business, leadership, and innovation. I'm your host, Dan Kahn, and I'm honored to have you join us today. So, let's get ready to learn some survival skills together. Hey everybody, and welcome back to a new episode of Only the Strong Survive. I am Dan Kahn, and we're doing a special Monterey Car Week episode from our rental house, and joining us today is Maurice Merrick from the Horsepower Heritage podcast. So thanks for coming out, Maurice, appreciate it.
Thanks, Dan. This is a terrific place to see the coastline, and after a long day of work, you're able to relax a little bit here.
Yeah. So last year, if you guys missed that episode, we did a car week, our first car week episode, also from this house with Terry Cargis from the Peterson Museum. This year, I thought we'd take it outside, and so for those who are audio only, you might get a little ambient noise. We're sitting on the porch. There's some horses walking around in the background. We got a view of the ocean on Highway 1. You might hear a supercar or two. So hopefully you are okay with a little bit of ambient noise because we're enjoying a nice day out here. Maurice, let's dive in. First of all, for our audience who is not familiar with your show, can you give us a little background on Horsepower Heritage? What is it and where did you come up with the idea?
It's a podcast, first of all, but also a YouTube channel. So I do certain videos on YouTube apart from the podcast, but every episode of the podcast is also on YouTube. As you know, YouTube has kind of expanded its footprint in the podcast universe now. In general, it's my look at car culture through a historic lens. My tagline is the people and stories behind the machines. In the car culture, as enthusiasts, we love the machines, right? But there are so many great people stories behind it all. And that's what fascinates me. So I would say it's my exploration of the folks who create cars, who restore cars, who drive, who even write about cars. I have a lot of authors on this show. It's a historic look at things.
I think I've listened to almost all of your episodes, and I enjoy all of them, but the ones where you go deep, I think, especially for our listening audience, if you're at the gym or you have some time in the car and you really want to go deep, like the Diesel episode I thought was really interesting, where I had no idea that Rudolf Diesel was a guy and that there was this whole controversy. And I mean, you can tell everybody, it was almost like he was like killed off or something, kind of, right? Like,
yeah, Rudolf Diesel, he was a pioneer and developed this new internal combustion power plant. And his intent originally was to bring motive power to rural areas for cheap. It was supposed to be running off of vegetable oils. His work actually got essentially co-opted kind of on the eve of World War I. Diesel power plants found their way into submarines. Before the war, Rudolf Diesel disappeared mysteriously. He was on a ferry from Belgium to England and disappeared. The book, The Mysterious Case of Rudolf Diesel by Douglas Brunt, came out a few years ago. And Doug is primarily a fiction writer, but this was his first nonfiction book. And I mean, it's a fascinating story. Doug tells it so well. So yeah, there's some intrigue there, and I don't want to spoil it because people should read the book, but that was a great episode. And it's exactly the kind of story that I love to tell, whether it's about Rudolf Diesel or whether it's about W.O. Bentley and creating Bentley motor cars and the struggles he went through, to keep his company alive, despite winning on the racetrack and Le Mans victories.
Le Mans, yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Eventually, he just couldn't keep it going, and they went into receivership and were purchased by Rolls-Royce. A lot of good lessons there about just innovation and how hard it really is to accomplish these things despite having resources and intellect and a great team.
That seems like that's more common than not with, especially, in the automotive industry. A number of successful companies that still fail in racing or building something beautiful. I mean, look at half the Italian car companies
they're gone,
bankrupt and disappeared, and then sometimes they come back and then they go bankrupt again, and it's really interesting. I have found, at least in automotive, most people tend to choose a niche, and then that's kind of their thing. Like they get down into that niche and they don't ever leave it. So if you're a hot rod person, you're into hot rods. If you're a muscle car person, you're into muscle cars. If you're a truck guy, you like trucks, you make product for trucks, you talk to people about trucks. You seem to have a really diverse viewpoint. I know you've got personally like a relatively stock Model A. I know you do some of the ragtime kind of stuff with those guys, but you also are involved in sports cars and Monterey Car Week stuff and hot rods. So where did all the car guy stuff come from, and what's your taste? How do you explain it?
Well, I didn't come from a car enthusiast family, but I've sat and thought about this, and it definitely has roots in, Matchbox cars and building scale models as a kid. I have old Land Rovers, and if you remember the show Mutual of Omaha's Wild Kingdom, they were driving across the savannah in Land Rovers, and that kind of imprinted me at an early age, and then it came to my conscious mind later on when I was old enough to drive and want cars. But my Uncle Dave was really a big influence on me because he was a car guy, and he's the guy who taught me how to tell a 39 Plymouth from a 39 Ford. And it was at that point, as a teenager, that I really began to peel back the layers.
Mm-hmm. I know you've worked in production and all that. At what point did you wake up one day and decide, I want to start making content about this subject matter I like? Like, how did that happen?
It was completely by accident. I was having beers with some fellow car guy friends, and someone said, we should probably try to do a podcast. It hadn't occurred to me at all. He said, well, we have these great conversations, but then they're gone. And it would be fun to get it on tape. That friend and I started to do our research, started to look into equipment, started to look into what was out there in the podcast universe as far as cars were concerned. And we had a lot of the same interests, a broad interest. Neither of us were like super specific about the kind of cars we enjoy. So we did a few test runs, and then his business started to take off. He's in like a boutique PR world. He said, I'm sorry, I can't do this. But by that time I had a bunch of equipment. Like, I was ready to go, Dan. So I just ran with it. And in fact, it was a good thing because it gives me full creative control. I do what I want to do. I interview the people that I'm interested in and tell the stories that I'm curious about. So that's how it really began. That was 5 years ago now, over 150 episodes. And I've been able to tell some really obscure stories, as you know, like the story of the Selden patent. So the Selden patent was a consortium of car makers in the United States in the first decade of the 20th century. There was one guy who was able to patent the motor car, and the car manufacturers decided, well, if he's going to have some control, we need to sort of build a cartel of our own so that really we have control. And the one guy who resisted it was Henry Ford. Mm-hmm. And there was a long court battle. And what Ford had realized, of course, was that it was going to be cheaper for him to do this, to fight it, than to pay a royalty for every car. That's a very obscure story, but it's fascinating to me because it really tells you about the development of the American auto industry, tells you a lot about the kind of person Henry Ford was. And so, yeah, I love telling those obscure stories that most people have forgotten about. It resonates with my audience. My audience loves those kind of stories. The history of the automobile just builds and builds on itself, and it's a never-ending thread you can pull.
Right.
And that's what I love about it.
It's interesting you bring that up. I mean, I think car people like cars for whatever reason, right? I mean, whether you were exposed by your uncle or Matchbox cars or grew up in a car family or whatever it is, but there is the business side of it too. And what I think is sort of unique about it compared to food or fashion or even the entertainment industry or anything else is the ones at least that are still surviving and building stuff are giant corporations employing thousands and thousands of people and making, hopefully, in theory, a lot of money. Or trying to. There's still an actual company and a process you can point to say, hey, they made this series of decisions and either it worked or it didn't. And you can kind of watch this arc over like 100-year period now, where you look at Ford as an example, where there are still Ford family members involved in the company. Jim Farley, the CEO, is a pretty public guy. He'll be here this week,
Right.
racing his Cobra. Once Bill Gates left Microsoft, it's gotten pretty hard to kind of point to Microsoft and say, here's all these product decisions they made and they're working really well or they're not, or like Google. Yeah, Satya is running Google, but I have no idea what's going on behind the curtain. That's just a big black box to me, right? But at Ford, you can say they had a big press conference this week where they said they were going to have their Model T moment. And I tuned in live. I'm like, I want to see what the Model T moment's going to be. And I watched it and still don't completely understand what the press conference was about, but okay, they're going to have some kind of electric skateboard type thing, and that seems cool.
Right.
And we'll see. Maybe that is going to be their Model T moment, and maybe their stock price is going to go up 50%, and they're going to take over the world, and they're going to beat the whole Chinese tariff thing. That'd be amazing if they did. Maybe it doesn't work out. I don't know.
Yeah, Jim is a very genuine guy. He's a genuine car guy. Mm-hmm. I think that has really given people a new look at Ford Motor Company, because none of us as car enthusiasts like the sort of design by committee thing. We want performance, we want excitement. Most of the car buying public, and I don't want to put a number on it necessarily, but let's just say for the sake of argument, 85% of car buyers, they just want a reliable machine that's safe and gets them from point A to point B.
Yeah.
So we know they're not building cars for us, but Jim gives us hope that they are, and they will, and continue to do so.
He is a real car guy. I've not had a conversation with him, but I've said hi to him before at the track and stuff, and he seems real, and I appreciate that. But Toyota does too. I like that Akio Toyota is real deal car guy, and he's pretty vocal about his opinions. I think at least in business, I still think there's room for that. I don't know what you think, but like I want these guys to have an opinion, and I want you to tell me what you think. Even if I don't agree with you, I still want to hear what you have to say. I don't think everything has to be vanilla ice cream, you know?
I think one of the things we see influencing the automotive industry now, it's not simply market forces, but a lot of public policy and regulatory stuff that's kind of pinning them into a corner in a lot of ways. So if you look at things like the thickness of a door or the height of a door in relation to your shoulder, right? Things like this are dictated by safety standards, understandable. But I have a 1960 Alfa Romeo Giulietta Spider, a great little sports car. It's delicate, it's tiny, you kind of wear the car, and we're not going to have those experiences anymore in new cars.
Right.
That's why I love old cars. It's more than just about nostalgia. It's about the design, the purity of the design. A designer, an engineer, he doesn't just have to answer to market forces anymore. He's got to answer to the regulatory environment and the policy environment. Jim and Ford Motor Company are doing a great job given those parameters now, and Toyota as well. And then the only other manufacturers that I see really perhaps making the most of it from an enthusiast point of view are the major sports car manufacturers. Right? But even they have a lot of technology in it that removes the driver from the real driving experience that we love.
Yeah, no, I think that's an interesting point, is they're walking a line to try and make a product people want to buy while also trying to comply with regulatory stuff. With that in mind, there's going to be a lot of debuts this week. Why does Car Week matter? What's your history with Monterey Car Week? Why do people come here from all over the country, all over the world? Why do they spend ridiculous amounts of money to stay in hotel rooms that would normally be a quarter the price?
Right.
Like, you know, I mean, certainly there's the global elite that are flying in and buying, you know, brand new bespoke sports cars, right? But the majority of the people are just coming to check out cool cars.
I mean, it's like any special interest, right? It might as well be a Beanie Baby convention because people love what they love.
Right.
So they congregate and they want to talk to others and compare notes and learn more about whatever their special interest is. I think most people come to Car Week because this is like the highest concentration of amazing cars in the world at one time. There are a couple other events. Now, I don't want to give short shrift to an event like the Goodwood Revival or Retromobile in Paris. There are other events, but the cars are driving everywhere here.
Yeah.
And, you know, the Pebble Beach Tour de Elegance, which is on Thursday morning, almost every entrant will be in the tour because you get extra points during judging if you do the tour. So that's the impetus for that. But yeah, I mean, we just get to see them on the road, parked on the street, and things you won't see most anywhere else, all in one place.
Yeah, it is definitely a moving museum that week. That's my favorite thing, I think, other than the people, is, I mean, you and I were talking right before we started recording that just the amount of stuff I've seen in the last 24 hours just sitting, you know, in a supermarket parking lot or driving down the road is shocking. Yes. And the kind of stuff that, I mean, I have a picture on my phone of an F40 that was parked at a Whole Foods parking lot and it was surrounded by like 16-year-old boys that are all just like walking around taking pictures of it. It made me feel good. I'm like, okay, cool. There is an enthusiasm there. They dig it.
And I'm glad you mentioned that because we hear a lot about young people not being interested in cars. And I don't think it's true.
No.
I think the car hobby is alive and well. I think this is true of you. I know it's true of me. As I got older, my tastes changed and we'll say get more refined. You know, there's a time when maybe all you're into is muscle cars, and then you realize there's this whole world of European sports cars, and there's some amazing 4x4s out there, and the car hobby is alive and well with young people. They don't necessarily go to Pebble Beach. They don't go to the Quail. You know, these are expensive events, but they're all having their own little gatherings all over the peninsula.
Yeah, you're right. My first exposure to Car Week, because I grew up in a car guy family, but my dad, his taste has not evolved at all since 1965. He likes the exact same stuff he's always liked.
And why is that, do you think?
I think he is just a product of his time.
Okay.
I think, you know, in 1965, he wanted a 64 Galaxie, 427 fastback. In 2025, he wants a Galaxy 427 fastback. Like he likes what he likes, and that's good. And I think that's cool. And he's had other cars, sports cars and all that too. But I didn't have a lot of exposure to this world. And a friend of mine is a guy named Marco Gerasi that you might know. He owns TLC Auto.
Sure.
And so when Marco and I were young, I think I was at Edmunds. I was a journalist, and I was in my early 20s, and I had a Mazda 6 station wagon press car, and it was Car Week. And Marco said, "Let's go." And I said, okay. And this is like Friday of Car Week. He's like, "Let's go up there and let's check it out." And I went, "Okay." Like, what are we gonna say? What are we gonna do? He's like, "I don't know. We'll figure it out when we get there."
Completely flying blind.
Yeah, and this is 20 something years ago, but not that long ago. And even then, it was Concours, which we did not attend because we couldn't afford it. It was the races, and which at the time was, I think, called the Monterey Historics. Now, obviously, it's the Rolex reunion. And I don't even think Quail was happening yet. I think, and then maybe there was like one or two smaller shows. And we drove up, we slept in the station wagon, we snuck into the track, which we now work with the track, so I shouldn't say it out loud, but we did. And it was great. And that was the year they had the F1 Clienti cars. So I remember standing kind of above the corkscrew in the parking area, watching Ferrari F1 cars ripping around the track, thinking this is the coolest thing I've ever seen in my entire life. And then like an owner stuffed one. Like we watched him just disintegrate it. And we were just like, I mean, it was horrible, but it was, as a spectator,
It's
we're
exciting.
like, wow, look at that. But it was a very simple thing compared to now, where now there's probably, I don't even know. How many shows are there this week?
I stopped counting, Dan.
At least a dozen.
Yeah. It's not just about the cars, too. It's about lifestyle. And the shows have developed sort of ever more precise themes.
Yes.
And you have things like the Concours of Lemons, which is all about kind of forgotten, sort of homely econobox cars.
Yeah.
So there's something
counter programming, right? So,
right, exactly. Yeah. There's something for everyone.
It's also gotten very niche. So like, I remember when Legends of the Autobahn was the German car show. In the beginning, it was Porsche, BMW, Mercedes. And then within a year or two, Porsche broke off and said, okay, now we're going to do Works. So now there's a Porsche show, there's a BMW and Mercedes show, there's an Italian show, like there's a tiny car show for like micro cars, there's the Lemons show. I accidentally kind of wandered into one today that was some other sort of show that I'm not familiar with. At the same time that the show scene is doing that, all of the traditional media that used to cover this stuff has, for the most part, either kind of disappeared or sort of evolved into a handful of sort of general interest sites. So you've got like The Drive and Jalopnik and Autoblog and all that stuff. But let's be honest, like The Drive is going to do a really good job covering the new car debuts and things like that, but they're not necessarily going to cover every show on the peninsula. So where do people go to get that content? Are they getting it on Instagram? Are they getting it on YouTube? Are they getting it on shows like yours? Because it seems like the media has also gotten much more vertical.
Sure. I think YouTube is the place where people watch the most car content because it can be long form and you have ads, but like a traditional website, you've got all these banner ads and pop-ups and things. And with YouTube Premium, you can just pay to not see those, so that's great. Instagram has a very healthy car culture tributary or galaxy in the universe of Instagram. So I think those are the two main places people go to consume the car content. In terms of podcasts, I mean, there's so many car podcasts. I think mine is very niche. My following is intensely loyal. I always try to, by the way, leave them wanting something with every episode. You don't want to ever exhaust it, right? In point of fact, you really couldn't exhaust it, but I don't try. I try to leave a few things on the table, and that actually spurs discussion, whether it's on my Instagram or on my YouTube channel. The people that I know, if they want to consume car culture stuff, it's YouTube and Instagram.
And what do you watch?
I watch so many weird YouTube car channels. I mean, I watch guys that pull cars out of the woods and the whole theme is, will it run?
Yeah.
And they're just trying to get the thing to turn over and run. But I watch a lot of European restorers. There's a young guy in South Africa who's not really that active on YouTube in the last few years, but he restores Alphas, and it's just so relaxing to watch him rebuild an Alpha twin cam engine. I could probably list 20 different YouTube channels that I really consume a lot of. I love Vice Grip Garage. Mm-hmm. He's hilarious and he knows his stuff. And there's so many great choices out there. again, that's another sign that the car culture is very healthy, especially with young people.
Give us a little background on your kind of, you have some experience in the production business. And
Yeah, I spent some time in the television business. You know, I was a freelance producer and worked on a lot of primarily cable. Cable was great at the time for a lot of different historical programming. That has devolved a lot. It's become beholden to the commercial aspect. But at the time when I was in cable, the History Channel was really doing a lot of great in-depth programming. So that was my background. I mean, I had great experiences. Like I flew to Tokyo to interview 5 Japanese veterans of the Pearl Harbor raid.
wow.
These were guys that were on the aircraft bombing Pearl Harbor, and they were all in their 90s at the time. Very interesting experience, especially working through an interpreter. You know, they were very reserved, difficult to read any emotion. I also interviewed Hal Moore. He was the subject of the film We Were Soldiers Once and Young with Mel Gibson. He was the commander at the Battle of the Ai Drang Valley in Vietnam. And it's known as the most conventional land battle during the Vietnam War. Amazing to meet Hal, you know, have breakfast with him and hear about his life and those experiences. That was a great training ground. You know, and I got out of the television business and I moved on to other things, but I always had that creative urge, that side of me that wants to produce something and share things with people. And so Horsepower Heritage has really given me that creative outlet.
Nice. I love that. As you look down the road with Horsepower Heritage and the podcast, where do you want to go? What do you want to do with it?
That's the big question, isn't it? I would love to tell you that there's a master plan. There isn't. You know, this is a ride that I'm on, and I try not to look at the map. I mean, to use a metaphor. Sometimes I feel like I'm taking the podcast in places, and other times I feel like I'm in the passenger seat. Obviously, I want to grow the audience. I call Horsepower Heritage a humble podcast because I don't have this huge audience that others do. But I also think that's good because I don't really want to appeal to this giant audience. This is not to slam another show at all. Don't hate the player, hate the game, right? But this isn't really to slam any other podcasters because we all do what we do creatively. I want to remain in depth. I don't want to just glide across the surface of a topic. I want to take my time with it, and that's why I love the long form that podcasting offers. Not everyone necessarily sees it that way, and they don't take advantage of it in that way. Yeah, big picture, I want to grow the show, but I want to grow it smartly. When creative ventures like this lose what made them cool in the first place, that's where it starts to go downhill. And so I always try to remember that. I try to keep that same enthusiasm and passion and remember why I started this in the first place.
I like it. And it's already opened some doors. I mean, I know you've had some pretty cool experiences as a result of the podcast, right? You've gotten to meet some pretty amazing people.
A few years ago at the Quail, I was asked to be the MC for the fireside chat, and the guest was Emerson Fittipaldi, and that was a fantastic experience. And they say, you know, be careful about meeting your heroes, but in that case, there was no problem. I mean, cool. Emma was such a warm, gregarious person. Recently, I had Justin Gurney on the show, and, you know, his father, Dan Gurney, great American racer, was always a hero of mine. I do get to meet some really fascinating people, some of the biggest collectors in the world. It's opened doors to things like, you know, going on vintage car tours, being in shops where some amazing race cars were produced over the years. I just interviewed Jim Busby, who, you know, was a fantastic driver and had his own racing team. And we're talking about Porsche 935s and Porsche 962s. That's another thing about Horsepower Heritage is it's an archive of sorts. You know, I want to capture a lot of these stories. These guys aren't going to be around forever. Right. You know, people constantly tell me, hey, I didn't know about this, or I wasn't familiar with this person, but thank you for doing this episode. I really learned a lot. And I'm learning along with them too, because I'm no expert. I don't know it all, but I'm curious. And I just want to plumb those depths.
What would you say to somebody who wants to start their own podcast, regardless of what the topic is? Could be cars, could be knitting, could be business, whatever.
Don't do it unless you're willing to go all the way. You have to be fully committed. I'll just give you an idea of what it takes for me to produce an episode and understand that it's all me, soup to nuts. Any given topic, research is probably minimum of 5 hours before I ever start to, you know, write a treatment or write questions. And I should explain, you know, I do 2 kinds of episodes. I do storytelling episodes, which are really just like mini audio documentaries, and I also do interviews. It starts with the research, and then questions if it's a guest, a script if it's a storytelling episode, the booking, the recording, the post, all told from start to finish. I've got probably 20 hours in an average episode. So it's a lot of work.
And they run about an hour. So
Run about an hour.
that's a lot of work.
So you can't dabble.
No.
The other thing is, I would say, focus on quality and don't try to chase a trend. If you're truly interested in a subject, make sure that passion is conveyed. It's infectious and it will find an audience, because undoubtedly there are others just like you who feel that same way about that subject. Invest in equipment, and invest in good audio quality. I hear so many podcasts where the audio quality is just not there. And most listeners will tune out within the first 30 seconds if the audio quality is not there. That might be optimistic. It might be less than 30 seconds. Sometimes I have guests that don't understand this, and their audio quality, particularly if it's remote. I do a lot of live interviews, as you know, but for remote podcast guests, and sometimes I'm talking to them from Europe. You know, they're in Italy or London and I'm in LA. They don't understand the level of quality we need. That can be tough. And sometimes, you know, you just have to go with it because it may have taken a long time to set this up. You know, their time is valuable. And I don't want to say, hey, we can't do this today because your mic's not good enough.
But boy, doesn't it get awkward when you're doing that? I've had a few of those, and we're fortunate that most of the time they get it, and we'll do a mic check. And if we have any doubts, we'll ask them to come on early. But every once in a while you get one where it's a hard get.
Right.
And then they're on some like 12-year-old pair of corded iPhone headphones, and one cable's frayed and the audio sucks, and there's a dog barking in the background, and I'm just like, oh my God. But you don't want to insult the person, right? So what do? You just have to kind of run with it.
And sometimes there's a team behind that person that didn't get it. You know, I've had that in the corporate setting where I might be interviewing a designer or someone who works for, you know, in the auto industry, and their team just didn't, you know, that puts them in a bad position. So most of the time I try to work around it, but you're right. Prepping the guest is key. And I have a simple one sheet of instructions that I email everyone well in advance. And I make sure that we discuss before we record, and nice. I try to iron all that out. But if anyone listening to this is going to start a podcast, that's huge. You cannot underestimate the importance of that.
Well, that's good advice. Well, looking forward to the week. What are you looking forward to? What's on your dance card?
I'm interested in the people stories. So truthfully, I can't wait to see all my friends. It's always a reunion at Car Week, whether it's at the track or at one of the shows or just strolling around town and you run into people. The car community is really pretty small when it comes down to it. We're all so well interconnected. So I'm looking forward to seeing friends. I'm looking forward to a few very interesting cars that are going to be crossing the auction block this week at the various auctions. You know, the Quail and the Pebble Beach Concours are always a lot of fun, and I'll be shooting a lot of content this week at a lot of these events and catching interviews all week. I think I have about 5 interviews booked. So it's going to be a busy week. I'm here to work. I'm not here to just have fun. So.
And you'll be at the track, I assume, at some point?
Absolutely. We'll be at the track on Saturday, and
that's the day.
Yeah, that's the day.
I'm looking forward to the IROC cars. I think that'll be interesting. Everham's bringing all those, and
some big names behind the wheel.
Yeah, and what Bruce Canepa told me, something that floored me, that several of those guys, including Jeff Gordon, who's a NorCal guy, have never been to Laguna Seca.
Wow.
And he grew up like 2 hours from here. And I'm like, how is that possible?
That's hard to believe.
Yeah, so I think that'll be interesting. I think the people are probably the best part for me as well.
Yes.
It's nice to reconnect with people and all that. Maurice, as you think about your podcast, about your career, you've had several careers, you look forward to what you kind of want to do with your show moving forward. What's the hardest thing that you've run into during this process? What's been the hardest thing to navigate or to overcome?
It's easy to get bogged down in the minutia of a project and lose enthusiasm for the project, because sometimes it's just not going the way you want it to. So it sometimes is a challenge to maintain my own interest and enthusiasm and just keep plugging forward. And I mean, there have been nights when I'm up at 2 and 3 in the morning editing for an episode that's going to be released in a few hours.
Right.
You just have to sustain. You just have to keep pushing forward. And whenever I hit an obstacle, Dan, or I feel like things aren't going how they should, because for some reason there should be this expectation that the universe brings things to me. Whenever I start feeling sorry for myself in a way, I say, you know what? The answer is work harder. And it always seems to be the answer. And things work out.
I think that's an interesting point. And in my experience as well, I think really the only way out is through. I think that was a Eleanor Roosevelt quote.
Yeah,
You just have
it's
to
true.
work your way out of it. What's the biggest mistake you made and what did you learn from it?
Not catching some people for interviews when I had the chance. I don't necessarily think of it as a mistake, but maybe a regret is, I didn't get to interview Gene Winfield, like this legendary custom car builder. Post-World War II, he was sort of one of the fathers of the custom car movement in the United States. Gene passed away recently at the age of 96, but I wish I'd reached out to him 3-4 years ago. I would love to have sat down with him. I guess the lesson is make your opportunities and don't put things off. If it feels like you should be doing it right now, you maybe should be.
Yeah.
Don't try to keep your powder dry. Just go for it.
Just swing.
Just swing.
Yeah. I like that. I think, and Winfield would have been a good one. When I was in high school, he had his original shop in Canoga Park right around the corner from where we were.
Right.
And I'd pop in there every once in a while and it was gross.
Oh, yeah.
He was like a grade A hoarder. But he did some pretty amazing stuff in that shop.
Another good lesson about Gene is that, like many people I admire and who have this longevity, they don't really retire.
Right.
They keep working. I think it's so essential for your brain. You got to exercise your brain, and you need a goal every day. You need to stay limber and agile.
Yeah, I agree with that. Same with Iskandarian, who's still doing his thing. And I mean, all those guys kind of just keep on hustling and grinding away. And that's even, they say that about the blue zones in this world where like the people live to be really old. It's usually they're gardeners or there's something that keeps them engaged and all of that.
Yeah, in Italy, one of the blue zones, that it's in a hill town. And, it's all a bunch of octogenarians and they're walking miles per day up and down hills, eating right. And it's a fascinating phenomenon.
Side note about Gene Winfield. About 2 years ago, we were at Galpin for a meeting with Bo because he wanted to show us, I forget which car he had just recovered. It was before the Hero Hada. He had bought one of the kind of sacred customs. I don't remember what it was because he's had quite a few good finds lately. But he wanted to show it to us in his little like Galpin Speed Shop museum collection thing. And I was there with some of my team members, some of whom we met tonight.
Right.
And it was me and a bunch of young women waiting for Bo to show up. And we didn't know Gene was coming. And Gene came for some other reason. And he shows up with his kind of sidekick. And I mean, even a few years ago, he's still like 93 or something, right? Shows up and just starts working the room and just starts hitting on every lady in the room. And I mean, and was totally serious. It was incredible. He's like 70 years older than these women and he's hitting on everybody. And I'm like, wow, okay. You're the guy. I love it.
You mentioned Bo Bachman. I have to say, he's my brother from another mother in terms of the enthusiasm. And he's like so into the history.
Yes.
He likes to go deep and he turns over these obscure cars from, everyone's forgotten them and he finds them.
That's what I mean. He's constantly digging these things up and he finds them and he has thoroughly researched them and he gets super excited. And this Corvette was the first car to ever have hydraulics and here's the guy who built it and here's pictures from 1952 and like, it's incredible. He's like the Indiana Jones of custom cars.
I don't know Bo Bachman, but one of these days I'm going to get him on the show.
All right, we'll work on that. We'll help you. Yeah, he's a neat guy and a genuinely nice person. And to me, that's always a bonus when you meet somebody who's that enthusiastic. Because I mean, look, anytime you meet anybody who's that focused or passionate about a subject, sometimes they get a little myopic, right? But when you can meet somebody that's that passionate about something and also is just a genuinely nice person and wants to share it with everybody, that's cool. I like that.
It is cool. And I think that's largely true of the car community. It crosses class barriers. It crosses income barriers. See some very ultra high net worth individuals talking just regular guys about cars
Yep.
at all these events. And I really love that.
Yeah, to me, a highlight, and we were actually just talking about this person yesterday, is, do you know who Fritz Burkhardt is?
No.
He won Best of Show at Pebble last year. And my team here got to interview him with Corey.
With the Bugatti.
For Quail, because he has this like survivor car, basically. And he has one of the best car collections in the world. And he's out there smoking and talking and hanging out and wants to drive it. And his cars have rock chips and dirt in the tire treads and doesn't care.
Yeah.
Just full send. Just wants to hang out with the community and talk to people and interact with everybody and just be a regular guy. And
he wants to have genuine experiences.
Yeah.
Which, you know, I think a lot of us, that's really what we're after. When we're using our cars, we're looking for a genuine experience.
Yeah, I think that's also why Bruce Meyer has made as many connections and friends over the decades as he has too, is he uses his stuff. He's really accessible. People can come talk to him. He likes nothing more than to sit with somebody and tell them the whole story of a car and how he found it and why it's interesting and what makes it special. And you're right. I don't know that like fine art collectors have the same attitude about showing off their stuff to the world as a owner of a 300 SL or something like that. So
it's true.
Yeah, that's interesting. Well, Maurice, I appreciate your time and I appreciate you being here, and I look forward to seeing you across the peninsula this week.
Thanks for having me on, Dan, and I really appreciate it. And thanks for what you guys do here. A lot of this comes together because of your team. So,
well, thank you. It's been a fun arc. Can't wait for the week and can't wait to see what the future brings. Well, that's a wrap for this episode of Only the Strong Survive. If you enjoyed the episode, please leave a comment or share it with a friend. It's available on Spotify, YouTube, and wherever other podcasts are found. Thank you to our guest, Maurice Merrick, for joining us. Maurice, where do people go to find out more about you?
Instagram, YouTube, or wherever you listen to podcasts, just search for Horsepower Heritage.
There we go. Thanks, everybody.